Hey there, today I'm going to be taking you through the plugins that I use in every song that I'm working on, why I use them, why I like them, all that kind of stuff. I have a template set up with everything I need to quickly track ideas, and this also allows my productions to stay consistent from song to song. So I'm just going to take you through my template and touch on the plugins I've grown to love and depend on after almost 20 years of creating music digitally in the box. I use Pro Tools as my digital audio workstation, but everything I talk about today can be applied to any DAW. We're gonna cover things like EQ, virtual instruments, amp sims, dynamics, effects, my mastering chain, and more. So let's get into it. Okay, so this is what one of my typical sessions looks like right here. Pretty much for everything that I do, we're gonna go just kind of in order from the drums, bass, effects, rhythm guitars, guitar leads and overdubs, and then finally like my mastering chain and how everything gets fed through. So first, let's just start with the mic, which is the vocals that you're hearing right now. And the first thing that I always put on my microphone channel is a little plugin called RVox. It's made by Waves. And what that does, and this is just the factory default setting, I never even touch it. I just put it on there and it just adds a little extra volume to my sound. Here's an example. Let's just listen to what this sounds like here.
Is one of the all-new Jackson American Series Virtuosos. Is one of the all-new Jackson American Series Virtuosos.
Now listen if I bypass this.
Is one of the all-new Jackson American Series Virtuosos.
Engaged?
Is one of the all-new Jackson American Series Virtuosos.
So that's just giving me a little more gain, which could easily be achieved by just bringing up the input signal on my mic when it's entering my interface, or I could bring up the fader here, but I like to get a nice firm signal just from the get-go before I start applying any other effects. Really, the same thing can be achieved with any type of compressor, and I prefer a compressor like the LA2A and LA3A stuff. This happens to be a Waves CLA3A, but it's the same as just like the Pro Tools stock one. Let's see, like a BF3A. And see, it's got the same thing, which is basically your peak reduction, how much it's squashing your dynamic range from the top, and then the output of that. It actually brings up the noise floor as well, so you got to be careful with that type of stuff. We'll talk about that in a second. But this is just really leveling off the signal, bringing up the quiet parts. If I'm talking quiet, it brings them up. And if I get real loud, it kind of brings them back down and just channels it. But compression is its own beast that we're not going to go over in great detail today, but it's something that takes a long time to learn, but it's worth it once you can figure it out. But it isn't even really necessary. Like I said, I just like to get a clean, loud signal coming in. But yeah, I like these type of compressors that don't have a attack and release. That's just for greater control, attacking when, or telling the compressor when to turn on and when to turn off, that sort of thing. But for this type of stuff where that isn't really necessary for intricate type compression, just something that that you can kind of plug and play is what I like. But the RVox, like I said, is just simple. I just put it on the factory default and it does what I want it to do. Next in the chain is an EQ, and this is the Pro Tools stock EQ 7-band, but everything I'm going to be talking about here can be achieved with any EQ. I like an EQ like this that has a visual representation of what's going on, as opposed to a more old school one like you'd see on board, like mixing boards, things like that. Let's go to like a Pultec or something like that, where this is all done with your ears. Now that's a good thing to learn how to do, but I like a visual representation of the bands and what's happening, how narrow the cues are, how much gain's being applied. So just so you can see that stuff. Another really cool one that I like is the Fab filter, because it's also showing you
all new Jackson American Series Virtuosos.
A representation of the frequency spectrum based on the whatever you're feeding it. So you can do that, and then you can, I want to bring up over here in the highs, here in the mid-range, or I want to cut this down, stuff like that. So Those are the type of EQs I like. And back to here, quickly, I've just gone through and made cuts in my voice where I thought there were frequencies that I didn't really like. And I have a detailed video on demonstrating this technique, surgically removing unwanted frequencies, specifically for guitars that you'll see here, but the principle can be applied to everything. And I do this for everything. I apply it to vocals, guitars, everything, where the more frequencies you can get out of there that you don't need are the less that are gonna build up. Again, all this is just for my mic here. Then I have a de-esser. I just happen to be using this one right now. It's not really my favorite. But just to get, it's just kind of there as just a little bit of a shield for any S's and shh that may come through and annoying. It just kind of like catches them and brings it down. Then the final thing, and this is one of my favorite plugins. This is the Waves NS1 noise suppressor. This thing is a magic pill that I discovered a few years ago. So when I was talking about a compressor bringing up the noise floor, so as it compresses the dynamic range, brings the lower parts up and the higher parts down to lessen that dynamic range so everything's a little more even keeled. One of the byproducts of that is it brings up what's called the noise floor from the bottom, which is like stuff like air conditioner noise, hum, stuff like that. So anyways, this NS1 just hunts those down magically. There's no dials really to turn, just a fader of how much. I set it for this preset of just air conditioning, and it's perfect. A lot of the time I'll like have air conditioning coming out of the registers here in the room. I'll be doing some interview or something, and you kind of hear it. Here's an example. I'll mute it here for this part. You're gonna need to turn this up louder, have headphones on or something to hear the difference, but listen, you'll hear air come in when I bypass this.
He's one of the all-new Jackson American series.
Because all this yellow right here is what's being reduced. Any background noise that's being reduced.
He's one of the all-new Jackson American series virtuosos. He's one of the...
Let's listen in a blank section here. Hear all that? I bypass it. Nothing. See, it's getting rid of all that, which is nice. So this is a desert island plugin for me when I want nice, clean audio, spoken word stuff, dialogue, interview type material, that sort of stuff. The Waves NS1. As a matter of fact, right now, wasn't gonna try to make any sales pitches in this video, but it happens to be recording month right now at Sweetwater, and I happen to notice, let's check this out real quick, this NS1. So here it is. I happen to notice right now through the end of October that pretty much any plugin you buy, I think, because I looked at like 4 or 5 different ones or whatever, with any one you get a free plugin here. You get the LA2A bundle from Universal Audio, which is that collection of compressors like the LA2As and stuff that you saw. Like this isn't the exact one, but you get a collection of these compressors free with any plugin purchase right now. So I'll leave a description below if you're interested in that for any of the plugins you want to get that you happen to see in this video or any at all. Moving on to drums. I'm still old school using Superior Drummer 2. I know the Easy Drummer stuff is fantastic. The Crim Drum stuff from Bogren Digital is fantastic. I use both of those, but my go-to set that I've been using for years here is just the ST2, and it's just because I like it and I know how it works. And the kit it comes with, this New York Avatar, just sounds awesome to me. And I've gone through into the mixer and just applied stuff exactly how I wanted each drum to sound. I think it's pretty cool. Let's just listen to a tiny bit of this song here. This was a song I put together for my Jackson Virtuoso demonstration, but listen to these drums. So everything we hear in that mix right there is just done with, look, minimal processing. I just have a couple plugins on every channel here. Almost everything's at Unity there. And all of this is developed just through this process that I've developed over years, you know, of just figuring out how to do proper gain staging, all that kind of stuff. And all this can be achieved with just minimal processing, like I've been saying. So anyways, Superior Drummer, I still like that, but Superior Drummer 3 is the thing right now. There's all the Get Good stuff, but this is the one I use. Moving on to bass. Now, if I'm going to break out the bass and play it, I will still use this Joey Sturgis Hellraiser plugin that I discovered a couple years ago because it sounds killer. But this happens to be program based, and I use this stock Pro Tools plugin, this sampler called Expand, and it's just got tons of different sounds in it, everything from strings and cool ambiances and stuff like that to drum kits and basses, synth basses and stuff like that. But you can do this with anything. You could do it with a piano. You could do it with any one of these plugins that just makes noise and find something that sounds a little bit like a bass. This is what this bass sounds like with nothing on it. Let me get to a little. So a little computerish sounding, but we put a little distortion on it with the Hellraiser. Still robotic sounding. But in the mix, it just fits in there real nicely. So I'm a big fan of this Hellraiser. This is another one of my Desert Island plugins here for bass. All the presets sound amazing. I love this clank knob on here. So just a really cool, gives a lot of distortion. Another great thing is that it can do crossover within, which is another more advanced concept, right? Yeah, so it separates the highs from the lows, so you can process them individually, have the bass, the super low frequencies, nice and thick and consistent at the bottom, so there's no dropouts or anything like that. You just keep them maintained. You maintain a nice weight at the bottom of your mix, but the high end, the articulation, the notes, and the actual tone of the bass, that's more on the high end, you can adjust separately. So a great all-in-one plugin for that. For my effects here, I generally treat effects differently. But on here I have my favorite spatial widening tool called Little Micro Shift, but I'm going to explain that more on a different track coming up here because this is already on a stereo track. And what this does is it's great for just widening mono signals. But this was already a stereo track, so I don't even know why I had that there right now. Maybe I was just experimenting. But also my favorite reverb here. This is called the True Verb, also by Waves. I really only use 2 settings from this thing, just presets. I use the Cathedral when I want something absolutely extreme, so I'll generally only use it for like effect if I want something really big. Like in this case, this particular thing happens to be just this like swell of noise here. Like a riser. Here it is with no verb. Oops. So putting some verb on there just makes it a lot more lush. It's got a nice tail on it. Hear how that hangs out for a while. So then the other setting I use for pretty much everything else is just a medium plate. And that's far less reverb. And I will get to more about where I use that coming up. The other cool thing about this plugin is that you can just put it as an insert on a track, where most of the time with things like verbs and delays, you want to send them to an auxiliary track. But here you can apply it right to, it's designed kind of to be applied right to a track. So that's cool if you want to do that, but I still do use it as a return for other instruments so I can control different things individually. We'll get to that in a moment though, but True Verb is another one of my Desert Island plugins. Moving on to guitar, the STL Tone Hub. Made a video on this recently about how this one with the Mark Lewis preset is my go-to, but there's so many great sounding suites and packs in this, but I can get away with anything. Before this, I used the stock Pro Tools, where is that thing? 11 Lite. And this is just like a light, almost like a trial version of an amp or whatever that, just off the bat doesn't sound that great, but you dial it in. Any of these can be dialed in is the point I'm making. Give me any guitar plug-in and, just with enough time, you can make it sound right. But still the sweetest to me is this STL Tone Hub, but it's quite an investment to get into this and all the different packs and everything and just so many options. It can be a bit of analysis paralysis, but I found the one I like and I just set up. It's what I use every time. Then I get back with the EQ and I'll generally scoop out a little bit. Again, check out that dedicated video I got about surgically removing unwanted frequencies from your guitar. Here's an example. Again, if you got headphones on, this is the only way you'll hear us, but bypassing the EQ. It's just some fizziness. Can't hear it real well in that example, but again, check out that video if you're interested in surgical EQ. So that's how my guitar sound, and every single song is like that. The same preset with this Mark Lewis, and then depending on what guitar I use and its response, its pickups, its body, all that kind of stuff, I'll move this around slightly and find the spot that's most offensive and just bring it down by a few dB. I got some clean guitars going on here. Just use another STL amp hub here with some effects to get that sound that I liked. A little more EQ. This time we're boosting some things. I just kind of clean it up, brought it a little more in the center for me. Okay, then with my guitar solos, exact same thing, except that I have some effects on there. And I just use a little delay and verb and dial those in, but it's the same rhythm sound. Okay, here's an example of little micro shift, like I was talking about, the spatial widening tool. So I have it barely doing anything here. You probably won't even hear much of a difference. But it just widens it out the tiniest bit with this setting. A little more up the center. And it pushes those delays and verbs that I have going on there on the guitar track itself out to the side a little bit and just makes the guitar a little more lush. Bypass. Totally up the center. Here's an example of it totally out wide. I have this little effect here. See, this is all the way wet. And listen to this. Just a little noise so you can hear it in context. It's just some feedback I have coming in when the guitar solo starts. Just a little ear candy. You hear how nice and wide that is? If I take this off, it's totally up the center. So this is a tool, another Desert Island one. I use this all the time on vocals and things where you only have one track of, but you want to widen it out. Sorry. You want to widen it out for certain things. An example would be a singer's like, blah, 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 blah. You take one track with that in the center, blah, 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 and then that blah, blah. At the end, you bring to another track with the micro shift, blah, 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 and it gives you that wide effect for it. That's just one example. Ideally, when you're tracking vocals, you'll have them do an actual left and a right that you can spread out and stuff like that. So it's a great plugin in a pinch where you need to make something wide, or once you get in the habit of knowing everything you're going to need to track and you get your lefts and rights how you want them and stuff like that, then it could be used more for effect like this for certain little things, like just a little spot in a solo. Then moving on to track verb. So we're going to get into a lot of things here that I think a lot of you have a lot of questions about, and that's mastering chain, how to get that going, gluing a mix together, making it sound like everything is cohesive, recorded in the same place, and just fits together nicely. The first step of that for me is a trick I learned years ago, which is applying track verb to everything. So here it is, just a medium plate in its default, as I mentioned, and this is just an auxiliary track that I send my buses to, and I control just a little bit. So my guitar bus has a little bit of verb on it that I can control individually because it's being sent to the track verb. Same with the solos. Most of the time, I'll do that, especially in bigger mixes, with everything. The vocal bus, the effects bus, the drum bus, I can send all that and apply different verbs. But what it does is it makes everything sound like it's part of the same space because I'm using one reverb and just a touch of it on everything. My drums, my vocals, my guitars, my bass, everything like that, and kind of brings it together and glues it together before sending it to the master bus. When I'm tracking and writing a song, I won't have any of this master bus processing active. But when I start mixing, I will bring all these things in, set up to the way I know that I like them already through years of experience. We'll talk about how I get to those places. But then I'll mix into this mastering chain. So that's a question I hear come up every once in a while. Do you kind of like mix the song and then put your mastering stuff on, or do you mix into your master bus? Every engineer has a different approach. For the past many years now, I've been mixing into my master bus, but you don't want to have these things on just while you're tracking or like writing a song, because it could affect decisions, and a lot of these plugins are very processor intensive, causing latency and things like that. So I kind of wait till most of my tracking is done, almost all of it if possible, and then I head in and apply my master bus processing and start doing a bunch of tweaks and stuff across to make my mix. But the good thing is that because of the system, the mix is kind of already pretty much mixed. I just have to touch some stuff up and make it right. But let's get into this mastering chain here on my master bus. I think this is exciting. I remember when I was learning about it, I was stoked, and now that I have a system in place, I'm excited to share it with you guys. So the first thing in my master bus right now is what's called the Slate virtual mix rack. Totally unnecessary though. I'm going to explain why I use this and ways around it. The first thing in this chain is what's called a trimmer. Okay, don't worry about this stuff right now. What the trimmer does is it brings down the overall signal from everything being fed to it. Now remember that everything, if you look here, out 1, 2, and this is the input of this is 1, 2. So this is outputting to this. This is outputting to the master. Everything in here, these are all, individual guitar tracks are busing to the guitar bus, and then the bus buses to the master. So everything is coming out through the master track here. And because everything is summed together, drums, bass, guitars, no matter what it is, keys, vocals, everything like that, all of that audio is loud when it comes together. If you just solo a guitar track, it might not be loud, but combined with everything else, summed together into the master track, it gets very loud. So I can bring that full signal down with the trimmer before it hits any of these other important plugins in my chain. I don't want to just blow out my first compressor in the chain or blow out my EQs, so I need to bring down the gain of everything. Now, this is all part of gain staging. You don't want to just have it super loud going into your master bus and then think you could fix it with just a trimmer. You need to control these levels. Yes, when summed together, they're going to be louder than the headroom that you have there, and you'll need to bring it back with a trimmer. But as transparent as you can be with this, the better. So it's even better sometimes to bring your faders down of your buses, which would do the same thing as trimming it at this level. But as long as you don't have, I believe, any clipping or overloading in any of your plugins along the way, if you've been careful with your gain staging, then when it hits your master bus, it's controllable and transparent to bring it down with something like this. There's also a plugin, a stock Pro Tools one called Trim, wherever that is. Sorry, it's a multi-mono plugin, so which makes sense. So Trim, we just do the same thing. You can just bring down the overall signal being fed to it, and it's essentially doing the exact same thing that the Slate does. Then it goes to a mix bus thing, which I kind of think is like fool's gold. I don't know, it's supposed to like emulate a channel strip on a nice console. Honestly, like with a lot of the Slate stuff, I like Slate stuff, but a lot of it is just kind of like I said, like fool's gold. I don't really like plugins where when you just turn it on, things sound better without you knowing what it's doing to the audio. And that's what I feel happens a lot of the time with the Slate stuff, like this Revival right here. Sometimes I bring this in and it just adds a nice shimmer to the top end, or it can thicken up your bottom end. And when you get into doing too much stuff like that, where you're just kind of like magic pilling it with like this, you did all this work throughout your mix, gain staging, surgical EQ, all that kind of stuff, and then you're just gonna brighten it up with something that you have no idea what it's affecting, how it's affecting the high end in your cymbals versus your vocals, or the top end of a snare drum, things like that. So it's, like I said, a magic pill because, oh yeah, it just sounds better. Probably because it's a little louder and a little clearer because it's got a little more, high-end clarity or something because of that. So these can be tempting, but just be careful with them. I use these very sparingly, if at all, ever, but it just happens to be in this rack, set up as a default and a palette that I can use if I like. And again, this mix bus stuff, just kind of, you could do the same thing as trimmer by bringing down your input signal, and just watch your meters. I just try to not let it live too much in the red. If I had this trimmer at 0, which I'll do right there, you'll see it'll just be maxed out. Which is destroying any plugin I have after these. These will look clipped now. I'm sure this is clipped. Oh, that's not one that you can see is clipped. Okay, well, at any rate, you saw that. I think I had that around there somewhere. Is there an undo on this? Oh yeah, there is. Boom. Oh well. Yeah, So I'll try to get it into the red a little bit, but I don't want it, maxed out in that red at all. So that's the first thing, to get a nice signal to feed what I like next, a Desert Island bus processing plugin, which is the SSL Comp, another Waves. Lots of companies make this one though. And watch what this is doing. It's just giving me about 2, maybe 3 dB of compression to the overall mix, which is more that glue we talked about, like the track verb. So a lot of the things that I try to do in my master bus is glue everything together, make it all sound cohesive in the mix, so no things pop out. Guys will a lot of times send me mixes to listen to, stuff like that. And the snare drum is just ridiculous because it has the ability to cut through a mix as opposed to like bass or something like that. So it's just crushing. But if there's a lot of steps to take to properly get it to a place where the SSL compressor is going to be effective in the way it needs to be. But as long as you do that, then it's perfect. It adds subtle and transparent compression to the overall mix so that the snare seems at a nice level with the kicks and the guitars and everything like that based on what you're feeding it. So I try to only give it about 2 to 3 dB of compression. If it was all the way up in here in 12, then it would no longer be transparent. You'd hear it pumping as it's grabbing onto loud signals and pulling them down and then releasing them again until another loud signal hits and then it brings it down real quick and everything like that. And that's controlled by your attack and release. I have just moderate settings here going on. I have 3 dB of makeup gain, so whatever it compresses by 3 dB, it's also raising everything up by 3 dB. So what I like is to be able to bypass this while I'm listening, and you don't really hear that I'm bypassing it or not, but you know it's doing the job. It's just tightening up and gluing everything together a little bit. Let me stop this. We're not hearing the click track every time. Not much of a difference in terms of volume, but I hear a difference in the cymbals. Maybe it's the guitars that we're hearing the difference in actually. So listen to the guitars are quieter when I have it bypassed. You hear a lot of the cymbals, now the guitars will come up. So it's just evening everything out quite a bit. These like analog buttons and stuff, supposed to add some analog warmth. That's another one of those things, like the magic pill type thing to me where I don't know what it's doing when I hit that analog, so I don't use that. I just use a 4-to-1 ratio, and as you adjust the ratio and the attack and release and the threshold, you'll see the amount of compression based on what you're feeding this through all your tracks will affect the amount of gain reduction that's happening. And you want to try to get that in, at least I like, under 4 dB. Then makeup gain, again, to bring up everything you're pulling back, you bring that up again with 3 dB here, and you're good to go. Next in the chain, we go to multi-band compression. And what this is, another set of glue, or another type of glue that's affecting only certain frequencies in different bands. So how I like to set this up, here I'm actually going to just make another one and I'll show you exactly how I set it up. It's super easy. It's quite complex as a matter of fact, but what I do is pretty easy. So I'm gonna bring in, this is the Waves multiband compressor, but there's lots of companies that make multiband compression. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna watch these faders here. This is the low mids, mid, high mids, and master, or maybe I got that wrong, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, low, mid, high mids, and highs. And then this is the master, okay? So let's watch the signals here. They're all fairly even right now because I've done a good job in my pre-mixing. You can listen to certain things. Let's just listen to the lows to the low end. Let's listen to the low mids. So it's just separating, same thing, right? Certain parts, certain frequency spectrums of my mix. This kind of looks like that EQ. It is basically like an EQ, a dynamic EQ though, and it's compression only in certain ranges. So I like to take out some of the fizz in the mid-range. I cut a little bit of high end off there so it isn't too sharp in spots, but then I'm gonna add high end back end later. So anyways, I've found that I don't adjust these unless I need to individually, but I take the master and I pull it down till everything is about touching these faders. Watch, you're gonna see these arrows all come down together. And the amount of compression there you can see as these dips are happening in this yellow line is very subtle. So we're breaking out some low mids there, bringing some down. Bringing down a little more of this mid-range here. I'm sorry. These high mids right here where a lot of the guitars live. And then another good thing that it's doing right here, every once in a while I'll bring these lows down more. And what's that doing? When double kicks start happening, that creates a lot of low-end energy that could start to muddy up and overpower your mix. So you could compress all that, but it'll compress everything. But with a multi-band compressor, you can bring down just the low end there. Double bass is happening. If we bring that down, it'll clamp down when double bass happens, depending on where you have that set. And it's beautiful because let's say you got some big stomp part, boom, ga, boom, it's gonna let those through, boom. But if you start doing double bass, and all that low end energy starts accumulating like that, it'll bring that back down, keeping it at an even keel. So again, what it's doing is things that are popping out, it's gluing everything back together and making your mix sound more consistent. So I'm sure, let's see what I got there, 28, 23 or 28, I can't read that. Let's see how I had the one set up before. .24, yeah, I had the other one at 23.8 or something like that, and this is at 24. So exact same thing. I'm gonna get rid of that new one I did there, and here it is. Let's see, I'll do a little bypass, see if you notice any difference. It's gonna be very, very subtle, but it'll be really a reduction of some high mids and control of that low end. And you might even say, oh, it's a little bit louder when I have it bypassed. And it is. I'm not really doing any makeup gain here. So it's compressing some of the upper dynamic range of my entire signal there, but that's okay. It's smoothing things out and it's smoothing out some very subtle harshness in the mix that's tiring to the ears over time. So when you're listening to an album that doesn't have any sort of delicate multiband compression put on this, it can become more tiring to the ears. So a tool like this, used properly, makes music more pleasing and easier to listen to. More of an advanced thing. Took me a long time to wrap my head around. Next thing here is just kind of a magic pill thing. One of these tape saturation plugins. Again, what is this doing? So it's one of those things where you have it on, you're like, do I like that better? I think I like that better, but I'm not quite sure. Oh, in this case, I'm making up more of my volume with this. So the volume had been reduced first with the trimmer in the virtual mix rack, the Slate virtual mix rack. Then it's being compressed a little bit, but I have makeup gain going back on there. Then the volume's being brought down yet again through the multiband compression. And then I bring my volume back up again with this Ampex ATR 102. There's lots of tape saturation plugins. And what I say, it's one of those magic pills things because who knows what it's really doing in terms of this digital realm and stuff like that. So I just kind of trust it. I've tried messing around with different tape speeds and bias and stuff like that, but that's a hornet's nest of possibility and stuff that I just can't wrap my head around. So I keep it pretty much at its default setting. I believe I took crosstalk off or something like that because maybe I thought one day that sounded better. And then with this particular plugin, you would think that this is the output and this is the input, but it's actually switched. This is the input and this is the output. So I'm watching my input signals, making sure they're not clipping, and my output, and I try to bring back as much volume as I can, thinking it's a better volume to bring back. Rather than bringing up the fader, this particular, these tape saturation plugins are supposed to add nice harmonic distortion and things to your signal to make them more pleasing, more analog sounding, more authentic, and more real. So I'm just trusting that it's doing that. But watch my faders. Just like in the VMR. Just like in the VMR, they're just kind of kissing the red there, okay? So that's all perfect. It's gain staged very well so far, but would it be to industry standard in terms of level? We'll get there. Next, for years now, I've just been adding a little, this is a half dB, typically a half dB to 2 dB of a little bit of a high-end presence to my mix overall after all is said and done here. Flat fast. So just even that little half dB there, see that? Just I got a little half dB shelf at 6K, and that just brings a little sheen that I like and that I notice is missing if I don't have it on there. So it's the final step there before I bring it up to level. So this is my final Desert Island plugin, the L1 limiter. This thing is great because it's a brick wall limiter. It won't let anything clip. That's why you'll never see my master bus clip, because I have it set to -0.3 dB of my out ceiling. So I used to set it at -1, but I heard sometimes that even some things can slip past that. If you're unsure what I'm talking about, you don't want it to cross 0 dB or unity in your track, because then it's clipping or overloading. You want to keep everything underneath that. You wanted to get it to sound as powerful and loud as you can before it clips. So one way to prevent that is by bringing this down. But this is one of those other things that you need to use sparingly. It can't be too dangerous. If you need to bring this down significantly or compress significantly, that means you need to go back into your mix and readjust your gain staging so that this is getting a nice undistorted signal. You could also use this within your mix. I use it all the time on a guitar bus, on a bass bus, on a vocal bus, things like that, to make sure that that particular bus isn't clipping. But again, if things are just getting pushed into it super hard and then you're just gonna compress it with this, it won't be as transparent. You'll hear that things are being compressed. I remember back in the day, a lot of my mixes would have a lot of shh at the beginnings and the end. You can't hear that shh going on when music's playing, but at the beginning or the end of a song, like a song's fading out and you start to hear the noise floor, shh, it's because I was over compressing with things like this. And that's an unprofessional move. When you hear air at the beginning or end of tracks, you won't hear that on a Metallica album. You won't hear that on a Guns N' Roses or an Elton John or a Lady Gaga album, because professionals know that that's unprofessional to have that. So word to the wise there. So then once I set my ceiling there, then my threshold is my overall volume, how loud it's gonna get. We'll play with this a little bit, and you'll see how much gain reduction, this attenuation right here, how much gain reduction is happening. Look at that. Barely any, 1 to 2, that's well gain staged in my opinion. To bring it up to 4, and if we were to bring in a meter for how loud we are here, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know a ton about this, but on this particular plugin, I aim for around 8 or 9 or 10, -8, 9, or 10 LUFS, which is just a certain unit of measurement. You can set up all sorts of different units of measurements for this thing, but that's just, I did a test. I wasn't sure exactly what this plugin was doing to give me the overall volume. So what I did was, I took some of my favorite mastered songs, Enter Sandman, I don't know, Symphony of Destruction, Them Bones, and stuff like that. Great sounding professional mixes, and I just saw what they registered at. And I thought, all right, well, this is the pretty consistent level that they're at, in and around this range. I need to get my mixes there as well, while still sounding clean and without distorting. So I found that was generally between 7 and 11, 8 and 10, somewhere in there. And this is an average. So that's good. And I found that at -4 dB for my threshold, but let's adjust this and you'll hear it get louder. Look at that distortion because of how much is getting reduced there. You hear that distortion? So I'll go back to 4. It's nice and clean. Notice how no reduction is being done right now because it's just a guitar track playing. No drums, no bass. Once these kick in, here we go. Another nice rule of thumb is look at your signals there and you bring your threshold down just to the top of the signals. It's a great technique for all sorts of compression. So I'm bringing this down to the top of there. Just kissing it. Now anything passing this is what's being attenuated. Well, still, nothing is over my ceiling. Nothing will ever breach that ceiling. It'll never get to 0 dB here, or just under it. It'll only come to -3. And you can see how much gain reduction over here in Pro Tools is being applied, this downward fader there, by everything I've got going on along here. By the way, if you like this song, it's a song I wrote that I'm calling the Virtuoso for the demo I made of the new Jackson Virtuoso. So I have a video on that, which you'll see pop up on the screen here if you'd like to check that out. And I also have a jam bundle available. You can get it at robarnoldworld.com/store that has the backing tracks, guitar tablature, Guitar Pro, video demonstration of me playing it, all that stuff, as well as other songs that I've done for other guitar demos and stuff like that. But every single one of those was created using this exact same system, this exact same template, and so they all sound consistent like that. And it's really a great thing. You know, I could spend another couple hours going over the template and more in depth, and I'm sure a lot of you guys that have made it this far, thank you for that, have a lot of questions about routing and gain staging and stuff like that. But I thought just as a place to start, this just showing you some of the plugins that I like might help you on your way. More about that in a second. But let me know if you want more of this stuff, because I am actually thinking of doing a course just on in-depth audio production, my methods for everything to create these songs, including templates and that sort of thing if you like them. And I try to make it so everything I talk about, every principle and method can be applied to any DAW, any plugin, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and about the plugins, again, if you liked any of these, like I said, I recommend them all. I think most of them are available at Sweetwater. The ones like the Pro Tools stock ones, every DAW has their own version of that. It's kind of the same, but if you want to get some of these Waves ones or UA or whatever like that, recording month until October 31st, 2023, you get that free UA LA compressor bundle, which is definitely cool. Not necessary, but cool, so check that out. And again, I'll have a link for you that'll take you straight to that plugin page in the recording month sales. Right now, using that link helps me out and the channel. And if you're interested in even more, I got a Patreon campaign that I'd love for you to become a part of, with early looks at my videos, behind the scenes content, all the jam bundles for free, hearing my new music first, all that kind of stuff. Also a guitar instructional DVD shipping right now with 10 free picks. So check out everything in the description below. Everything I got in there, and again, using my links really helps the channel. I appreciate everybody that watched, and I hope you guys enjoy this type of stuff. Please let me know if you'd like more of it, because this is actually kind of my favorite stuff to do. It's just that I know it's such a niche market. There's, I doubt this is going to be a very popular video, but I know it'll be evergreen because there are guys all the time that are looking for this type of information, and I hope to be able to share some of the knowledge that I've gained over the years. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. If you've been a rider on the bandwagon for a minute here, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the interaction, all the thumbs up, the subscriptions, all the love the positivity. Thanks so much, guys. Rob Arnold signing off. Hope to see you again for more.